G'day friends, welcome to video 3 in the stamp series. We're still on face base. We're going to do the last video in this series and we're using this beautiful stamp here. This is the last stamp in this set, so this will be it for face base and then we'll move on to the other stamp sets after this. Now, Katery was left me a beautiful comment on YouTube and I just wanted to share some of the tips and tricks if you were struggling a little bit with getting a clear impression on your stamp. Now, she did mention that, and I'm just going to preface this by saying I'm no stamping expert, but it is always useful to share some tips. This is not a great example, but some people have stamp pads, some people have mouse pads. If you put this on, because this is a really hard surface here, if you put this on something soft that can absorb a bit of tension and that is very flat, so a book's probably not the best example, but something that can absorb a bit of that pressure when you apply the stamp, you will get all the clear detail in it. And you just want to put that stamp on there, evenly apply a slight bit of pressure and in all the areas of the stamp, so don't just press down here and forget about the face. Make sure you press on the face, and you don't have to go like full on wrestler with it, but you just do apply some even pressure on that stamp and let the stamp sit on there for a couple of seconds, and that should absorb the ink and get all your clear fine details. Another tip when you're cleaning your stamps, I've mentioned this on the packet, all the info is on the back of the packet for how to take care of these, but you can just use a damp rag and just dampen it with water and just lightly wash over the top. You don't want to use any solvent-based cleaners with this because you will start to break down the clarity in that stamp. And I've mentioned that on the back as well with the solvent inks. They will start to break down some of the clarity in this photopolymer. They're very durable stamps, but they do not like solvents. So that's another tip. And the last tip I have for you is I've sometimes seen people get new stamps and use a very, very fine sandpaper to lightly buff off the top. That is not a good idea for this. I've mentioned it on the packet as well, but if you do have that tendency to do that to your stamps, just grab an eraser and just erase over the top. Now, I didn't do that for my stamps and I had no issues with them stamping properly, but if that's something you're used to doing, please don't use the sandpaper on this because like the solvents, you'll start to break down the clarity in the stamps, and I don't want you to lose any of that detail, especially in some of the smaller sets like the Decora set, or especially in the Charmed, I'm sure, where you've got some of these really fine eyelashes. You don't want to lose that. So an eraser, if anything, but I haven't really found a problem with it, so that's just another tip for you if that's what you're used to. There are plenty of stampers out on YouTube that have really in-depth videos on how to stamp properly. Just type in search bar how to stamp properly and I'm sure there'll be a ton of videos for you to watch as well. I'm no expert, but I just love to play with them. So that's it for the advice. Today we're going to do a brushstroke body, much like our brushstroke mermaids that I have a lesson on. And we're also going to do a bob on her because I know a lot of people have been mentioning hair is a bit of an issue, and we're going to take the same idea that we used in the Swatch Dolls video and we're going to put that lovely little bob on top of our stamp today. So let's get straight into it and share some techniques. Okay, today I'm going to use a red pencil just to show you, this is a Mitsubishi pencil, I'm just going to show you where we're going to put our outlines, and then we'll go in later with a brush pen and actually fill in the details. We're keeping this super simple, it's really not going to be hard to follow along at all. So just above the eyes here, you'll want to just make a blunt bang, just a line straight across the top of the eyes. Now, from this eye, I like to take where this wing finishes and actually like to scoop that down to this point right here. Now, that's where our bob is going to finish. And you're going to use this as a guideline. Again, I've stamped this in the VersaFine Smoky Grey ink, just so you can see, but I would recommend stamping it lighter when you're doing a lot of alterations, just so that those working lines disappear. Now on the top, you can grab a circle stencil, but I don't think you really need it if you're just going to connect this part here to there. So we're doing like a rainbow shape and we are just going to connect them. That's a guide for us because we don't want our hair to be, too much volume up here, but we also don't want it to be super flat. So that's literally our guide. When we come to put the hair on, we're gonna go a little bit outside that line, but I'll show you that in a second. Now, if you want her bob to be swooped all the way out, you can definitely put your little reference point down here. For me, I'm going to just follow where that line would be and slightly curve it out. So I guess the best way to describe this is if I was going from this point here, I would just kind of do a flick out this way, or a slight curved line going out and up. and then I would connect this part of the hair down here. So you've kind of got like this triangle shape going on right here. Now on the other side, because her head is tilted, you're not going to see as much of that hair, but we want to use the same angle that it goes on out here to replicate over this side. So if you could just imagine a half circle kind of cutting across that nose, and just outside here, maybe this little wing here would be a good reference point. We're just going to connect that part down to there. So you can see it's a much smaller triangle that we've got going on. And then we're just going to hide that, disappear that behind there. So you can already see our bob is just established. Now, when I do bangs, I don't like them to be completely flat. I do like to separate them with a little M shape, just so that you can see that it's hair. Otherwise, it could start to look a bit like a helmet, which is cute. It's its own look, but we're not doing that today. I'll let you do that if you want to do that, but just for the demonstration purposes, I do like to put an M there just to break the bang up and make it look a bit more like hair. Now, this is as much as we're going to do on our bob. When we come to outline it, you've got the line right here. Now this is where I think a lot of people start to get confused about hair. Hair generally lies pretty flat on top. So when you start to put hair up here, that's suggesting that you've kind of gone wild with the Aquanet and the teasing. So we're just going to keep it quite flat. If you want to make it parted in the middle, just put a little bump, like a little bird when we draw birds. You can put a little bump there. I'm not going to do that because I like it to be quite flat. We are just going to take that guideline that we did here, and we're just going to bump it out just a touch. So we're going to create a line just outside of it and then connect it down. That'll suggest that her hair isn't completely glued flat to her head, that there's a touch of volume, but nothing too wild. We're not going too 80s today. And that's literally it for the bob. So this whole part is her hair here. I'll just lightly color it in so you can see. And that's as much as we need to do. You can make the bob longer, you can play with maybe just curving this in and she can have more of a rounded bob. I do like this kind of choppy out, flicked out bob, but you can obviously bring this line in, round it towards here, and she'd have more of a 20s looking helmet head bob, which I also like as well. Now for this particular brushstroke body, I actually don't want this part of the neck. So I'm going to connect the jawline here to the hair. Then we're going to take this part of the neck here, and I'm simply going to make this part connect down like this. She's going to have a very thin neck, this one. And I'm just keeping this body exactly how it is as well. And I'm going to, just for the sake of this, curve it down to the bottom of the page. Ooh, I'm off camera. Curve it down to the bottom of the page just so we can finish her down there. I'm going to show you how to put an arm in, completely optional. Let's put a circle for a shoulder in here. Now she's going to have a bit of a sassy, like hand on the hip kind of feel. So we want to put this circle on the shoulder. Keep it quite small. If you're going to do a big circle, she'll have big muscly shoulders, which is not a problem as well, but I like it to be a little bit more refined and delicate for this style. We're going to put a line just off here and kind of reference where her hip or where her waist gets its smallest. We're kind of going to put our little elbow joint there. So it's much smaller than the one we did up here. And then we're going to curve this line back down, or just draw a straight line down here. And we're going to just put our hand resting on her hip. Now I'm just going to do I'm going to infer that there's a hand. We're not actually going to worry about it. And let's put a little thumb here. So you can see it's just 2 little strokes, and that will be our hand. Now from the outside of these circles, you just want to connect them to the outside of the other circles. And that will make your arm. And that's a really simple way to just put a little arm on this particular stamp. I've got a zebra sign pen here. It's a disposable pen, and I've got a Pentel pocket brush pen here. Any brush pens would work. You could also go in with the Tombow brush pen. That would work fine too with this thicker side. Or you could just go in with a water brush and your favorite watercolors. That would also be nice as well. Now we're literally just going to trace over the features that are already down. So I'm just going to follow that line here. I'm going to outline this one. I do like to put a little stroke in the middle just to put a little bit more detail in there, but I don't need to go nuts with this one because it's all about the body today. I'm just going to darken up the nostrils a little bit, just fill in that top part of the mouth just there. And I'm just going to put that little stroke underneath. The hair, I'm going to press a little bit heavier with my brush pen for these solid strokes across, and then I'm going to ease up when I draw that M. Now down here, I want to press hard as I start, but then I want to taper it off where I need to finish. So it becomes thick and then goes down thin. For the same thing out here, I want to just keep this one thin and connect it in. And now I want to start at the top of the head. I like to do it in halves this way and then go that way. We're going to start thin up here. We're going to push harder when we start to get that curve, and then we're going to taper it off as we get to the edge there. The same thing on this side, we're starting thin up the top. As we go down, we want to push a little bit harder and get a bit of thicker line, and then we want to taper it off nice and thin. Now we're going to go around the outside of her face. I like to cut this in a little bit and make it a little bit more angular. So I'm just going to darken up that area in there, and then I'm going to swoop this down a lot more straight. Now I'm going to keep this kind of a pointy chin and just pull it in that way. I don't really want to connect this black line to that hairline, but it doesn't matter if you do. I just kind of want it to taper off nice and thin. That's as much as we're going to do to the face. Now I'm going to grab my Pentel pocket brush pen, and I'm going to add in the lines on the body. Now I want to start with the arm because I want those to be a different width of line. So I lied. I'm going to take this pen back out again, the zebra sign pen. And all you need to do is just play with the pressure that you're applying the lines. And I want these ones to be kind of close to each other, but I don't mind if they just flick out a little bit. I actually really prefer a dry brush technique when I do this, so I would just normally grab some ink and a brush and just apply it that way. And for the hand, let's just put the idea of the hand down there. Now you can see where we've cut off this neck just here. That's because I want to go in really fine and have a thin neck, kind of widening out as we come down the body, and I think that'd make a really nice contrast and keep that line really fluid and very interesting looking. So again, I'm playing with the pressure that I'm adding. When I get to the arm, I want to come close to it, but I don't want to go over it. So you'll have a few strokes that you have to be a little bit fiddly with around the arm area. For this, because she's kind of nude, I do like to make sure that at least one of my brush strokes gives her a bit of a modesty cover up just there. And if you find that it's difficult to get the brush stroke in between, you can go back. Obviously you can pre-plan any of this out. I find that it's easier just to work more loose. It's more fun that way for me. And you can see you don't even have to hit the outside edges. I really like it when that brush stroke starts to dry out towards the end and I get some separating of that ink. I really, really enjoy that. And we're just going down the whole body until we get to the bottom. Now this is a very specific kind of a look. This is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but because I really enjoy the brushstroke mermaids, I thought it would be nice to incorporate. This Pentel pocket brush pen that I used is water soluble, so I'm just going to grab my brush loaded with some water, and I'm going to run down the right hand side of all of those strokes that I just created, because I want to put a shadow in there, but I really don't need to bother with anything too fancy. So let's just pop that shadow in. And then I'm just going to put a few little shadow areas in the face with some of the leftover ink. Just focusing on the right side of the face. In fact, sometimes I will just color in that entire right side. And then the right side of the arm would be fun to go down. I'm going to add the Tombow brush pen to the hair because this is also water soluble, and I want you to see how different some of these inks can pull out in color once you add water to them. So you can see here the Pentel pocket brush pen does pull out a more true neutral grey, and it's a little bit warmer. This Tombow brush pen pulls out very, very blue, and it's a much cooler grey. If anything, it's actually just a really, really dark indigo. So there is a difference when you're using brush pens, and that's why I kind of stick to the same one in the same image, because I like to have that unity between the greys. So just if you have decided to use two different brush pens and you don't like that grey is different to this grey, take some of the other grey and pull it into the shadow areas that you already put down, and then you can literally build that harmony into your drawing. So I'm just going to pull some from there, I'm going to steal it, and I did just put a little bit of a shadow connecting down this line down to here. I want to blot out some of that because I don't want that to be a really, really dark shadow, but I did just want to pull in that face a little bit. Since we thinned it out on the right hand side, I wanted to make sure that it looked just as angular on the left hand side. So that's about as much as we're going to do for this. This is really how simple it is. I'm going to go and make another example and show you that in sped up version. But these are just great to put on the side of your planner. You can put a little speech bubble out there. If you've got a column or a margin in your planner, or your your weekly schedule, ring binder, whatever you like to do, I find that these are really, really quick to add in there. You can do rainbow strokes. You can fill these strokes in with washi tape. That's really fun to do as well. You could just, if you made this in a bigger journal, or you wanted to curve that around, you could just add a mermaid tail on there and she's done. Simple. You could also use these lines if you did them in a different color, or if you have a white gel pen, you can journal in these lines and write your little to-do lists or your little stories or your quotes, poems, music lyrics, whatever you like to do. I find that these are really, really quick and easy to put in your journals. And that's something that I just really like about this stamp, is that it's a quick and easy way to add a body with these heads. I'll say one thing about this body as well. You can just not ink up the head, just take the body, and you can interchange the other heads that are in this pack. So you could just put this head on there. You could literally not ink up that neck, and you could just put this head on there, and it would be completely different. You can even put the different face base heads on there. And something that I like to do if I need to give one of these a body is I like to use this body. So they do work together quite well. Sometimes your proportions will look a little bit abstract, but I have made it so that most of these can be interchangeable and kind of seamless. So I'm going to show you the sped up version of the other one I make, and then I'll come back with some more examples. Here are the two examples that we've done today. This one you saw me do on camera and in real time, so I hope those were some helpful tips for you. If anything, I want you to get out your brush pens. I know that they can be super intimidating for some people, and I think they're a really great tool, and especially if you're working loose, and especially if you've got a good guide to start with, I think that'll build up some confidence with using your brush pens, because they are a great tool to use. I really, really do love brush pens. This is the one you saw me do in speed. I wanted to show you an idea that maybe you could pull out the stripes from her body and pull them across your page and do some journaling in there, maybe make your lists, some goals, I don't know, whatever you like to do in your journal. It's really up to you, and it'll be personal preference, obviously, but maybe you could do swatches in here, like each color could be a different swatch from a new watercolor set. You could write your thoughts, or you could write the name in it. So you could swatch out your opera pink, pull it out here, write opera pink, swatch out your whatever you want to swatch out, I guess, might be an interesting way to swatch. I have an example here in my Tomoe River insert, my Traveler's Notebook insert. This one is a ghost stamp, like a second generation stamp. So I had stamped on one page, and then I came and used the leftover ink on this in the smoky gray. And you can see it's a really light outline. It almost looks like I did it with a lead pencil. And I've done the same with this was with the Tombow brush pen. So this would activate again with water. I'll just show you. There we go. So you can actually get some really loose effects if you want to go back in and then, pull some of that leftover ink back into some more of these shadow areas, and you can rework your images. Obviously, if that's something you want to do. If that's not something you want to do, don't worry about it. But I find going back in sometimes and reworking things is a nice way to stimulate new creativity. And especially if you're unhappy with something, you can loosen it up, you can rework it and try again. Like maybe I wouldn't have done what I just did, but this was just an example in my book. I can always go back and redo it in about 10 minutes because you can see it didn't take a long time to do. Obviously, once your imagination is unlocked, the sky's the limit, and I really can't wait to see what you guys do with these stamps. I know that brushstroke bodies and brushstroke mermaids aren't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think it's a really great way to build confidence with your brush pens or even confidence with your paint brushes. So I think that's a nice thing to look at. I really like the idea of swatching out on one of these bodies. I don't know if I'll get around to it, but I think that's a fun idea. I'd like to see someone try it, please, and tag me on Instagram so I can have a look. Well, I hope you found that lesson insightful. I'm going to do a couple of close-ups, and then I'll be back again to move on to the next set of stamps. Bye!